Well, good morning again.
Morning.
It's certainly good to have everyone out this morning and to see you all face to face. We're going to be in Romans chapter 12 this morning. Hopefully we'll finally get to finish it after I guess it's the third Sunday we've had trying to get through it. And then we'll get a little bit into chapter 13. As we finished last week, we got into these what I call one-liners. We talked about if you're going to have diligence, don't lack in it. You're going to be fervent in the spirit. Hope, what are we supposed to do with it? We're supposed to rejoice in it. Tribulation, what should we do with that? Be patient in it. Prayer, once a week on Sunday. No. Continue steadfastly in it. The needs of the saints, distribute to them. Collect. Try to help others. Hospitality, it says we need to be given to that, meaning you don't need me to come talk to you and give you a lesson about hospitality and to try and correct you and train you up in that. We need to be given to that. That means you kind of take it upon yourself to make that something that you do. Oftentimes, I just think of that word, given to hospitality. I think of all the characteristics that I feel like my parents had to teach me, and all the things that they don't do this or do this, or you need to learn to apologize better, and you need to do all this. And they had to teach a lot of those things, but at some point, they can teach me all they want, but I have to decide that that's what I want to do. I have to decide that I want to participate in that, and not just because she's watching me, but once I get out of the house and I leave and she can't see what I do, what am I going to do now? And so I think a lot of these things fall into that category. You can read these one-liners and go, that seems like a good thing to do. But at some point you have to make that decision and say, this is what I'm going to do with my life. I am going to be hospitable. I'm going to have all of these attributes that are listed here.
Whatever you do in that situation, it all comes back to you.
Yeah, for sure.
One way or the other.
Yeah, God speaks very strongly about how he feels about hospitality, meaning your ability to welcome people in, meet their needs, give to them. And it also says in other passages, without wondering what you're going to get out of the deal. Well, what am I going to receive, or how much are they going to take, and what is this going to cost me? And I think there's also a passage that uses that phraseology that says, what is this going to cost me? Don't ask that. Just have hospitality. So, verse 14 is about where we left off. It says, bless those who persecute you, bless and do not curse. I like this passage, and I think we can barely talk about this idea of blessing persecutors or people that are against us without looking up the red letters, as I like to call it, seeing what Jesus had to say about this matter. It's always good to go back. A lot of the New Testament gives us advice on how we ought to live, how you should treat people, how you should conduct yourself as a Christian. A lot of it is stuff that Jesus already said, and they a lot of times maybe provide commentary or back up what he said in the New Testament letters. But it's already been said. Jesus already probably put it pretty clearly, so it's always good to go back and read what he had to say. So Matthew chapter 5, verse 38, you have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. That's the way that they did things. If somebody gets you, you get them right back, and then it's gonna even things out. Verse 39, but I tell you not to resist an evil person. But whoever slaps you on your right cheek, turn the other to him also. If anyone wants to sue you and take away your tunic, let him have your cloak also. Whoever compels you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. Give to him who asks you, and from him who wants to borrow from you, do not turn away. There's your hospitality. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. I like how he says, you've heard this. This is the common teaching. This is what the world is going to tell you. If you wake up and wonder, what is the world going to teach me? How are they going to train me in how I ought to treat people? Here's what they said. You have heard that it was said. You shall love your neighbor, but go ahead and hate your enemy. Don't like them. Don't put up with them. Put them away. Hate them. Whatever you got to do. Here's what Jesus really says. But I say to you, love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you, that you may be sons of your Father in heaven. For he makes his sun to rise on the evil and on the good. He sends rain on the just and the unjust. For if you love those who love you, what reward will you have? Anybody can do that. Do not even the tax collectors do the same? It's easy to love someone that already loves you. So, the deal here is we're supposed to love our neighbor. Why did Christ feel that was so important? I feel like everyone kind of gives their commentary on this, and they say, yeah, you want to turn the other cheek, but then they provide all this commentary about when that's not applicable and when you don't have to do that. And I never really see when can we do this? How's that going to work? And why was it important to Jesus Christ that we turn the other cheek? I think we'll talk about it a lot more in the lesson, but kind of my short answer to that is, how are people going to know that there can be good in the world if we are not the ones that are showing it to them? You think about the time right before the flood, the thing that God chose to say about the human race. He said, all they ever do is think about evil. Continually. They're just thinking about what they can do that's evil. I wish I hadn't even made man. I go back to that phrase. I think y'all probably know. I read it probably the last, I don't know how many Sundays, because I think of that. God is trying to create something different on the earth. He says at one point in the New Testament that the entire old law can be summed up in one word, which is to love God and love your neighbor. I don't see any downfall. I don't see any drawbacks to that idea. Love God and love your neighbor. I'd love to see someone say, well, here's what's wrong with that idea. I'd like to know what they have to say. Love God and love your neighbor. What can go wrong there? So the idea here is, why is this important? If we don't break the endless cycle of I got you back, you got me back, I'm going to do this, you're going to do this, what's going to happen? Evil continually. It's going to spiral out of control, and nobody's going to think that there's a God in this world. Nobody's going to think that there can be any good in this world when all they see is everyone's lashing out. A lot of people come to Christ. They come to a realization that there is a God when they see the evil that does exist, but they see Christian A or Christian B over here trying to do something good in the midst of all that. When they see us out there trying to do something good in the middle of all this, good things happen. They see that God does exist. That's called shining your light. It's letting them see that good can indeed exist. So we've got to turn the other cheek. I think Jesus explains that is a worthwhile tactic, because now I got slapped on both cheeks. That wasn't very fun. Why is this worth it? Again, they're going to see Christ, but something about doing that, I think of the passage where it says, if you do good to those that have hated you, you're going to heap burning coals on their head. And that's probably going to upset them, but it's a shock to the system when we do something good back to that person that does evil. Another point that I want to make about this before we move on to something else, okay? This whole idea about us trying to do good to that person. With a person that's doing evil, we can feel comfortable letting them continue to do evil because of what we're fixing to read in this passage, that God says, vengeance is mine, I will repay. God has a plan for repaying those who do evil. Our hope as Christians should be that when I turn the other cheek, or I do good to them, and I bless them, and I say something nice to them, even though they hate me, we're already secured. That person can do nothing to you. I can get slapped in the face. They could even kill me. I think a lot of times we give the commentary on you have the right to defend yourself, and you don't just have to let someone pummel you. And I've heard all the arguments there. Whatever. Okay. All I'm saying is, what if they did kill you? We have security. We're coming back from the dead. You're going to be all right. Who's not going to be all right? Jesus is trying to get us to think about something other than just me, myself, and I. He's trying to get you to think about how are we going to convert them and help them see that you could just do good. Because I'm doing it in the face of evil. I went ahead and blessed you. I went ahead and said, okay, do you need anything? You can have my tunic. You can come stay with me. What do you need, sir? That's what he's trying to get you to see, that if you'll do that to them, they may have some reason and say, I probably could do something good here. That's what our hope is. Because really, we've got ourselves backed up because God's on our side.
You're talking Matthew 7:12 now.
Yeah. Let's read it. Therefore, whatever you want men to do to you, do also to them. For this is the law and the prophets. That's the idea there. And so sometimes we could call that like the golden rule, but basically, do unto others as you want done to you. And you're hoping that they might come around and see that for sure. But that was the whole idea of the law and the prophets. Just go out, love God, love your neighbor. It's really pretty simple. So back on Romans 12 here, that was all that was just off of one comment there in Romans 12, but there's a lot to think about when it comes into persecution. Let's go on to verse 15. It says, rejoice with those who rejoice, and weep with those who weep. I think when we look at that verse, sometimes I feel like maybe it's the situation where maybe it's not us who are weeping or rejoicing. Why would he have to tell us to rejoice or weep? If you're going to have that reaction anyways, why not have that? Something about it tells me it's just about being with somebody, comforting them. Maybe they're going through something that's causing them to rejoice or weep. You're like, I'm not currently experiencing this. But he says, go ahead, be with that person. Understand their emotions and try to be with them in that moment. And I think that's a very special thing. I think of John chapter 11, verse 35, the shortest verse in the Bible. Jesus wept. And I sort of wonder, Lazarus had died. And I'm sure Jesus did have emotion in that moment. Lazarus was one of his friends, I do believe. So it's quite possible he was weeping of his own accord. If there had been no one else there, he may have done that. And I think God sees our problems, and he has compassion on us. Jesus was capable of feeling emotion, and he did, obviously. The more you read about his life, he was a human as well as being God. So he had those emotions. But part of it is he looked on that crowd and the way that they were saddened by that situation, and he wept with them. I think even if he didn't know Lazarus, I think Jesus probably would have wept with the crowd. And just my thought. Partially because Jesus knew, this is not a problem. I can raise dead men from the ground. In fact, he could do it with his own self. He conquered death. In fact, in John chapter 11, verse 25, it says, I am the resurrection and the life. None of us can say that. You know what I can say? I can say, I am alive. But I can't say I am life. There's just one letter difference. I think it reminds me of when it says in the Sermon on the Mount, he says one jot or tittle, talking about the old law. Just one letter. We can say I am alive, A-L-I-V-E, but Christ was able to say I am life, L-I-F-E. I guess two letters changed. We can't say that, but Christ can. So death is not a problem to him. But going back to Romans chapter 12, without missing that point, be with people. If they're going through emotions, try to be there with them and try to help them through that. It's a wonderful thing for Christians to be able to do that, to care and have compassion. Jesus always had compassion. I used to be uncomfortable with the thought that men could cry. You know, men don't cry. Don't do that. That's for women to do. But somebody pointed that out to me one day. You know, Jesus wept, and he didn't have a problem with that. He was the manliest man that I think ever lived because of the way he conducted himself on the earth, and he was okay with weeping in front of people. They saw him. And it wasn't embarrassing. Yeah.
If we love our neighbor as ourselves, when something good happens to them and they rejoice, we should rejoice with them. We should love them enough to be happy that something wonderful has happened to them. Or if it's something sad, the same thing.
Yeah, it reminds me of the I guess the parable where the woman was sweeping her house and found the lost coins, and everyone rejoiced with her. You know, I don't get to spend those coins on something for myself. She's going to spend it on herself, but I'm still happy. Yeah, it's a good thing when we only think about ourselves and we have it focused, or we're me, myself, and I focused. We don't think to care about what someone else has gotten. We might be envious. We might be. You might think about the things that you want. I guess that would be coveting. You might be jealous of them or something like that. We have to have compassion and care about other people. I think it's an important Christian trait. Okay, verse 16 of chapter 12, it says, "Be of the same mind toward one another. Do not set your mind on high things, but associate with the humble. Do not be wise in your own opinion." First couple parts of this, it says, "Be of the same mind to one another." There are a lot of good New Testament passages on the idea of having unity. Having unity of mind. You may not agree on every single possible thing that ever has existed or been a thought, but be of the same mind. We need to all come together on Jesus the fact that he died, was buried, and raised again. He's at the right hand of the Father. We need to all be of the same mind that we are here to worship Him. We need to be of the same mind of the fact that we are all trying to serve and live for Him. We need to be of the same mind on all of those things and have unity of mind and thought. So that's important, and a lot of these things we have to work toward here as a group, because there are going to naturally be things that we disagree on, and we can try to work those things out and be of unity, rather than, I believe this, and then the other side of the church believes this, and that's why they don't sit together. Stuff like that is happening all the time. It's happening in almost every church. And we're not building new churches in certain towns. We're not building new church buildings because the first one got overfilled with people. That's not happening very much. We're building another church building because we disagree with the people here. Verse 16, be of the same mind toward one another. Do not set your mind on high things, but associate with the humble. Do not be wise in your own opinion. If we were doing that, we'd be in a lot better position. So, associate with the humble. That's another important thing that we need to do. James teaches us that we don't need to give preference to those who come into the assembly that have a finer adornment, or they have better clothes than the person that looks raggedy and comes in off the street and hasn't had a bath in a few days. We're going to treat those people the exact same, right? We need to, because that's how we're taught. And so we're associating with the humble. We're ready to associate with anybody and love them just as we would want to be treated. Matthew 7:12, I believe, was the verse that we read. And so we need to be prepared to do that. And finally, do not be wise in your own opinion. I want to stop and think about some things on the topic of wisdom, and then also about not thinking that we possess that within ourselves. So the passage I want to read is from Proverbs chapter 2. My son, if you receive my words and treasure my commands within you, so that you incline your ear to wisdom and apply your heart to understanding, yes, if you cry out for discernment and lift up your voice for understanding, if you seek her as silver and search for her as for hidden treasures, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord gives wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding. I believe that we in here can say that we have wisdom. Now, that passage in Romans chapter 12 said, don't say that. Don't say that you have wisdom, but what did it actually say? Do not be wise in your own opinion. If we realize in our own opinion we don't possess wisdom within ourselves, we weren't born with that just natural I can be super wise, but instead we incline our ear to see, where is this wisdom going to come from? Not for me. We're going to apply our heart to that understanding. We're going to cry out for it because we want it really, really bad. We want some discernment. If you've already got it, you're not going to cry out for it. You're hoping to find it. We're going to lift up our voice for understanding. You're going to seek it as for silver and search for her as for a hidden treasure. If you've ever gone looking for treasure, you don't do that if you're already sitting on a bigger stash of treasure yourself. So we understand we're not wise in our own eyes, but it's out there somewhere. How we're going to find it, who's it going to come from? Then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. Therein lies the secret of wisdom. For the Lord gives that wisdom. So I can confidently say, I didn't have wisdom, but I possess it, because the Lord gave it to our possession, just like a hidden treasure. He's giving us basically silver and gold and treasure. He's saying, please possess this so that you will fear me and so that you will live for me. That is wisdom. And I hope that each one in this room will try to possess that as having sought it from the Lord and not from self. Because there were a lot of people in that time that thought they were very wise. Mm-hmm. There were the philosophers of this age. There were, I believe, Aristotle and Socrates that came along right before the time of Jesus. And they came up with all these sayings and wise things that they thought to be true. And we're taught to go not looking for it within ourselves. They tried to learn everything and then just come up with all these smart, wise sayings. We're taught to look to the Lord, and that is what gives us this wisdom. Here's what it says. He stores up sound wisdom for the upright. He's a shield to those who walk uprightly. He guards the paths of justice. He preserves the way of his saints. Then you will understand righteousness and justice, equity and every good path. When wisdom enters your heart and knowledge is pleasant to your soul, discretion will preserve you. Understanding will keep you to deliver you from the way of evil, from the man who speaks perverse things, and from those who leave the paths of unrighteousness to walk in the ways of darkness. This wisdom sounds pretty good. If you think about it, it is a hidden treasure. And some people, when they hear about God, they hear things like, Jesus came to the earth and he was born of a woman. He was God in the flesh. He lived a life of love. He went around doing good. Acts chapter 10 tells us, what did Jesus do while he was here? He went around doing good. He loved his neighbor. He loved God. He was trying to please both. He died, was buried, and he actually came back to life, and he's trying to give you that opportunity. What do you think? And people say, you talking to me? What are you talking about? You can come back to life, and God came in the flesh? Who are you? You talking to me? That's how people are responding to this message, because they have wisdom from within. They're not fearing the God who created all of what we can see. If they had that wisdom from beyond themselves, they would hear that message and go, life and immortality for eternity, yeah, I'll come be a part of that. I want some of that. But that's often not what happens. And so we need wisdom beyond ourselves. Verse 17 through 21, back in Romans 12, it says, repay no one evil for evil, have regard for good things in the sight of all men. If it is possible, as much as depends on you, live peaceably with all men. Beloved, do not avenge yourselves, but rather give place to wrath. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. Therefore, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him a drink. For in so doing, here's that passage, for in so doing you will heap coals of fire on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. I think that goes back to verse 14 about blessing those who persecute you. Here it is. We have this here ready to back us up. we can understand that God is ready to avenge. That's a thing that He plans to do. We can be confident that if you are just so gung-ho about getting that person paid back, they stole from me, something bad has got to come their way. Understand that God is ready to avenge those who do not come to Him. But what we should really be focused on is, they stole from me. I wish I had that thing. But I'd like for them, most of all, to come to God before it's too late. That's the thought we're trying to get to. It's what Jesus is trying to get us to think on. Because every single person that He could have looked at, you know what thought He could have had? See, you're the reason I'm going to the cross. You're the reason I've got to come do this. You're the reason I've got to have thorns stuck through my head. You're the reason I've got to be on the cross. You could have had that thought. He's thinking, no, I love this person. I want them to come to repentance. I want to have grace on them. I want them to live for me and live for God. I want them to see the love of God. That's how He thought. Why shouldn't we think that way? Yeah. That's a good thing for us to think. We want to live peaceably with all men. Another passage that I want to quickly go to, Hebrews 12, verse 14. It says, "Pursue peace with all people and holiness, without which no one will see the Lord." And I kind of referenced that one earlier, but there it is in Hebrews 12:14. A great passage for us to think about. If we don't pursue peace and holiness, no one will see the Lord. It's not ever going to happen. No one will ever look around and say, "Oh, there is a God." Because everyone can see this fine creation out here, but not everyone's turning to the Lord. They've got to see peace and love coming from us. It's got to come from us. And so we hope to get to show that to them. "If your enemy's hungry, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him a drink. For in so doing, you will heap coals of fire on his head." Hopefully, that's going to cause them to realize something's wrong here. I was doing evil to that person, but he didn't respond the way I wanted him to, or the way I thought maybe he was going to. Maybe they'll have some realizations. We hope they will. So do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. That's a tall task for each one of us, but one that we need to spend some time meditating on. We can talk about it all we want here. I try to go through here and study and teach and present things well. I hope that I can do that well. But at the same time, we all have to receive this in our heart and have a heart change and a decision that I am going to try to do that very thing. Not just agree with it, but to then go and do it. And so that's what I'm encouraging you to do, to meditate on Romans chapter 12. Sometimes, and I think Romans 13 might be one of those cases, sometimes you can just read it, and it's like, now that I have that understanding, I have some knowledge, and I know how God operates. Romans chapter 12 is not so much like that. You need to read it, and then read it again, and then read it again, and pray that your heart can change and be in tune with that in a very powerful way. Because when we do, special things are going to happen for sure. And so I hope that you'll take this and apply it to your life and spend much time focusing on it. Thank you all for class.